Hello, I'm Stephen Davidson. Welcome to Looking Back on a Life That Didn't Happen, episode 20, starring the fabulous Ben Hurley, all the way from New Zealand. On this show, I talk to comedians about a life they haven't actually lived, an alternative journey they know absolutely nothing about. No guest ever sees the questions in advance. They survive purely on their own spontaneous, improvised nonsense, delivered in a serious manner. Thanks to Ben for his time, and as you'll hear, a barrage of utterly brilliant bullshit. On with the show! Ben, thank you very much for joining us on Looking Back. Welcome to the show.
Well, I wish I could say thank you for having me, but as you know, I'm very reluctant to do this, and I am being forced by my people.
We have to begin in the present day, Ben, and I can see why you're immediately reluctant, because you made an extraordinary decision this morning to pull out of the race to become the first Kiwi Pope. The current Pope has said that you were a shoo-in after his retiral announcement. Why have you dropped out the race, Ben?
Well, the problem is, Stephen, I'm actually allergic to hats, and I can't wear any kind of hat. And actually, the larger the hat, the worse my allergy becomes. So I wasn't aware of this, having only ever worn a yarmulke, which is a tiny hat, and had mild case of the sniffles. But when I progressed to a baseball cap, I broke out in hives. So you can imagine what the large mitre which the Pope is wanting to wear for ceremonial occasions, and what that could do to my health.
But other than that, you were up for it. It's just the hat, and that's all that put you off.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think I could make a lot of good changes to the Catholic Church that would be beneficial to, the world's biggest religion, which it is. And I think things like flavouring the holy water, or carbonating it, or both, could really get a lot of the zest back in Catholicism.
I think it's religion's lost, Ben. You recently bought a majority share in the Times newspaper in England, vowing to give every single news story a little hint of New Zealand. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think it's sort of the role reversal of the colonial, as we are here in New Zealand, that we are going to get our own back one day and start slowly clawing back parts of the United Kingdom for our own. And what a better place to start than the institution that is the Times newspaper. I mean, can you get a more English institution or a more British institution than the Times? Other than, if we were to buy all the black pudding and call it the all black pudding. There's not much more we can do to influence Britain and have some revenge over the colonial past that was enforced upon us, but to take that particular publication and make it more Kiwi. I'm not sure that I would necessarily implicate the editorialising of all New Zealand stories, but I would definitely encourage New Zealand advertisers to buy time and column inches in the Times, and let's see if we can really move some of our dairy, some of our jandal footwear, and some of our kiwi fruit, be it gold, green, or the new hybrid red.
And finally, Ben, before we delve back into your dirty and magnificent past, we have to address last week's story that you have so far refused to comment on. From next Tuesday, all of your onstage punchlines are going to be in Spanish. Why is that?
Well, it's been a long time coming, Stephen, as you know. After my trip to Madrid, and I really just want to show off that I picked up a little bit of Spanish. But of course, I didn't pick up very much, so all my punchlines will just end in por favor.
And will you be doing that even when you're gigging in Spain?
No, then I do it the opposite. I'll speak in only Spanish, apart from my punchline, which I'll say, yeah, bro, at the end of every joke.
Okay, I'm glad we cleared that up, Ben. So, now, are you ready to dive deep into your murky pool of memories from the very highest board?
As I say, I'm disgusted that I have to sit here and do this, but I think it's probably beneficial.
You were born Benjamin Darkness Peter Hurley to fire eater Helen Troy and television gardening superstar Harry Hurley. How did those guys get together?
It was an interesting tale. Helen Troy. That was how you pronounced my mother's name, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Helen Troy was obviously the most beautiful woman in New Zealand, well known, and my father, sort of the Alan Titchmarsh of New Zealand, who would like to rummage around in people's gardens, finding sort of botanical treasures, and it was one day when he was filming in her garden. Just happens to be, she just happens to be the most beautiful woman in New Zealand, and was widely recognised, and was many times on the cover of New Zealand magazine. We've only got one, and so we just named it after ourselves. And sparks flew in the sort of retelling, the New Zealand Kiwi retelling of the princess and the stable boy. This was sort of a Kiwi retelling of that particular story.
And your dad's obviously most well known for his catchphrase, 3 days no more, and his supposed ability to grow any flower or veg from seed to full grown in 3 days. Did you ever see any evidence of that in the back garden when you were a wee boy, or was it all special effects and lies on TV?
Look, I don't say this easily, because he is so respected in the broadcasting and the botanical community, but it is 100% untrue.
Okay. I'm sad to hear that, but I appreciate your honesty. You set fire to your first primary school trying to copy one of your mum's tricks. What were you trying to do and what went wrong?
Well, there was only two ways to go, really, for me, wasn't it? It was either gardening or circus performing. And, well, initially I thought, that I would go into that side of the family business of fire eating. I tried other sorts of fire. I tried fire listening. I tried fire smelling. And I just, a few times, just set my own hair on fire. But I was trying to be a maverick, I was trying to innovate. But, the classics are classics for a reason, Stephen. And the fire eating is where it's at. Now, if you actually think about fire eating, you shouldn't take it literally. It is actually a trick. You shouldn't actually eat it. It's very dangerous to do. But my mother, as a skilled fire eater and the most beautiful woman in New Zealand, she was no teacher. And she sort of threw me in at the deep end and see what I thought I could do. And I literally tried to eat the fire. And what came actually was the world's biggest fire burp, which actually was sort of like a flamethrower, sort of like a Vietnam War style flamethrower, and hence the accident in which you're speaking of.
And just thank goodness it was the school holidays, Ben, when the burp came.
Absolutely. I mean, the only life that was lost was the school gerbils who had been left there over the school holidays accidentally, because a small child by the name of Tristan Walthamstow was supposed to take them, but he didn't. So, in many ways, I'd probably put them out of their misery, because they were starving to death slowly.
Yeah, and a lot of the children who attend the school, they don't blame you, do they? They just think that they had died already when the fire started. So we can absolve you of that one, I think, Ben. At the age of 10, a new boy starts at school, and you soon become best friends. What was Ice-T like as a mate?
Well, not many people know that Ice-T spent some of his formative years in the small town of North Palmerston here in New Zealand, or Palmerston North as it's more commonly known, but I always like to give it a slightly more regal name and put the North at the start. But yes, Ice-T's father was a woodwork teacher, and there was an exchange program for woodwork teachers with the United States of America, particularly the area of South Central LA, and he was whisked away to the central Manawatu here in New Zealand, and we became fast friends. We did, and I tell you what, not only did we learn to drive together, but we also learned to shoot together and combine those two pastimes.
Well, his first album, Pleasant Stories from Waiheke Island, did not sell well. Was it your idea to push him in that more violent lyrical direction?
Yes, of course. He was more interested in viticulture at that point. Waiheke Island, of course, well known for its wine. But I thought that's not where it was at for a couple of teenagers from New Zealand. I thought the youth of the world wouldn't be as interested in Pinot Noir as he was. And so I thought at the time there was a lot of escalating tension between gangs in his hometown of LA, and I thought maybe draw on those experiences rather than the fermentation and process of making a fruity bouquet.
And probably because in your hearts, Ice is more interested in wine, you're more interested in the gangster lifestyle. The OG himself, he soon drops you as a mate, but you are so excited by your new band, formed at age 12, that you hardly notice. Can you remind us, Ben, what your band were called and the name of that blistering first hit single?
Well, I mean, it does surprise me that you don't remember the name of my band, Tyrant Lizard King, who played Christian jazz music, and it's an unlikely fusion to have in the top 40 charts, but we really broke through with Jesus Is My Motherfucker, and I think that a tune like that, it's just a classic. People will talk about Stairway to Heaven, people will talk about Hey Jude, but not far out of that breath will be the dulcet tones of Jesus Is My Motherfucker.
Yeah, and perhaps there's a link there between the song and you're turning down that chance to be Pope as well, but that's maybe too much of a random connection. But Jesus Is My Motherfucker knocks Dave Dobbin off the top of the charts, and Dave sent you a very angry letter in the post. Can you remember what it said? Well,
I do. I remember it very well because he wanted to collaborate. There was a space of the sort of music that happened then, where there was where you would get an established singer-songwriter to sing the chorus, much like Bone Thugs and Harmony did with Phil Collins, and well, Dave Dobbin would have loved to have collaborated with me and the band Tyrant Lizard King, but the postal service in New Zealand is notoriously inefficient, and I actually received both the letter asking to collaborate with me and the angry letter on the same day. So yeah, so that's where the problems arose.
That one hit is enough for you, Ben, of course. Being scolded by Dobbin puts you off the music business a little bit, and at the age of 13 you put the proceeds of your hit towards the Pororua Peanut Sanctuary. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, there's a lot of peanut oppression in New Zealand, and much like the racial tensions going on in the United States right now, there is a lot of legume tension here in New Zealand, and peanuts they don't really get a fair run. I'll be honest with you, and don't get me started on peas or beans, but the Pororua Peanut Sanctuary is something very close to my heart, and I gave them pretty much all the proceeds from that single, and they don't really exist anymore. So it's one of my great regrets that I gave them all 2.5 million New Zealand dollars that I made from that song.
The remainder of your school days passed quietly until your final year in the New Zealand Knitting Championship final. What did you do? What did you create to win the New Zealand Knitting Championships in your final year at school?
Well, not many people know about this, but it was less about what I actually created and more about the fact that I eliminated my competition. I discovered very early on that I was not a particularly good knitter or knitician, as we call it in the business. So what I would just do is use the knitting needles as weapons and sort of intimidate my opponents until they dropped out. So you'll see that I did win that, but you'll also see that there are no second, third, fourth or fifth places, that I'm actually the only entrant that year, and that was mainly just down to my intimidatory tactics, many of which I learned from my old friend Ice-T, of course.
And that's actually, that fits in exactly with it, because I saw a picture of you with the winning prize in the World Knitting Championships, and I couldn't work out what it was. But what's happened is you've not even finished it, Ben, have you? You've just intimidated the other kniticians out of the tournament. You've not even bothered to make anything. It's remarkable.
Yeah, well, I mean, you literally just have to knit one and purl one to qualify, and so that's all I've done.
And it is, of course, at the finals that you meet your first true love, who was judging the event. Can you remember the chat-up line you used on Dolly Parton, Ben?
The chat-up line is very simple. I complimented her eyes, and that's the first time anyone had got that high on Dolly, and she was astounded that anyone knew that she had eyes, and thus romance ensued.
The two of you moved to Australia shortly afterwards, where she funds your attempts to create a theme park just outside Sydney. And this was years before Dollywood. I mean, what was your amusement experience themed around, Ben?
Well, as we moved to the giant red continent that is Australia, I felt that it should encapsulate the things that are truly Australian, and And of course, what is more Australian than the marsupial? So Pouch World was what we created, and with the loving help of my partner of the time, Dolly, we created Sorry,
can you remember the names of some of the rides at Pouch World, Ben?
Yeah. I can. There was what was there? There was the Mucus Maze.
Yeah.
That was big. There were. That's all I got.
I mean, it's obviously happy memories, Ben. You know, I can see that you obviously enjoyed your time working at Pouch World, but you don't remember much about it.
No, I mean it was happy memories to a point, but of course there was the accident, and you know those having to leave it all behind was one of the hardest things I ever had to do.
So shortly after that fails, you embark on a torrid affair with a backpacking Hillary Clinton. How did you guys meet up?
Well, Hillary and me was an interesting story, and you know, tragically I had to part ways with Dolly. She was left with the enormous bill because Pouch World was, you know, wildly unpopular, as it was just a giant pouch that you went into, and for realness, there was just a sort of a mucusy hole at the bottom. You know, while I thought that sort of realness would be exactly what people would want, it turns out that it's not at all. So I just kind of fled, and it was near Ayers Rock or Uluru that I met Hillary Rodham Clinton, and she was young and fanciful and wanting to experience the world, because she was very ambitious. She's a very, very ambitious person, you know, Stephen, and she said that one day that she would be president of the United States of America, and well, I think it remains to be seen whether that'll happen.
And you move in with Hillary and her brother Bill, Ben, who are living on a ranch in Coffs Harbour. Did you have any idea then that I mean, obviously you've heard Hillary's ambition, but did you have any idea then that they would manage to hide both their Australian accents and their family connection to go on and run America?
Interesting, isn't it? No, I had no idea. They were actually incredibly good actors. They were classically trained actors. So they were masters of voices, imitation, costuming, makeup. They could be any people anywhere. They were part of a 4-person acting troupe that travelled around the golden border of Australia, performing the complete works of William Shakespeare for primary schools.
And did you make any attempt to stop them, Ben? Because I know you ended up working as Secretary for State for a couple of weeks early on in their administration following your move to America, but you're sacked for throwing a ruler at Monica Lewinsky. Did you sense that she was going to try and make trouble for them?
Look, that incident has been taken out of context, and I've talked about this before. It's been well documented that I did not throw that ruler. What I thought it was, having lived in Australia for some time, was a boomerang. Now I was trying to show Miss Lewinsky, lovely woman by the way, lovely woman, can wear the hell out of a beret. I was trying to show her not to be afraid that I could turn anything into a boomerang, and so I threw it towards it, thinking it would curve away and back to my waiting hand. But unfortunately, my hubris was misdirected. And I can't turn anything into a boomerang after all, and it did hit her squarely in the face. So I feel like I've gone over this before. I don't think it needs to be relitigated, but I hope that we can now put this to bed.
Well, unfortunately, the staff at the White House don't believe the boomerang story, and you get the sack. Alone and puzzled, you're on a travel agent booking a flight home to New Zealand, Ben, when a passing Hugh Grant sees you through the window and decides that you'd be perfect to play the villain in his new film. What was it about, and what was the part he was offering you? Well,
this is an amazing story, really, because this was about to be my big break in Hollywood. And as I'd picked up some acting tips from the Clintons, being such incredibly skilled actors themselves, I wanted to break into Hollywood and live that life. And you know, it's sort of a Hollywood dream, isn't it, to get spotted on the street and by somebody of great influence like Mr. Grant. And he was about to cast me in his movie, which was called Fighting Man, and he was going to be the fighting man. Now, it's a bit of a departure from his usual sort of foppish style of British person who can't get out a sentence. But yeah, he was going to be a Taekwondo trained master, and I was going to be the villain. And my name, which is an incredible name, was Darren. So he was about to cast me. He was about to call the producers, the studio head. It was all go. But just at that very moment, he thought he would stop and talk to a sex worker, a young Divine Brown, and well, the rest is history. The movie was shelved forever, and my movie career was nipped in the bud.
But I think that glimpse is enough. I mean, Hugh gets into all sorts of trouble with Divine, obviously, but he does have a soft spot for you, so he puts in a word at the local radio station where you launch your new show, Lego on the Radio. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, Lego on the Radio. Well, look, I thought it was a great idea, but it turns out Lego, quite a visual medium, and people don't just want to hear the click-clack of Lego going together. I thought it would be disrespectful to the form of Lego to have any kind of commentary, so it literally just was clicks. And I thought the true Lego fan would be able to decipher what was being constructed with the Danish blocks simply by sound. But unfortunately, that was not the case.
And it's about that time in 1994 that, according to your autobiography, Ben, you gain a sense of inner peace by doing egg-fried yoga every morning. What does that involve?
Well, of course, there's nothing like fusion, Stephen. And up near the Chinese-Indian border, this is where egg-fried Yoda, egg-fried Yoda, quite a different character from the Chinese remake of Star Wars, but... Sorry, this is quite difficult to talk about, but yes, up near the Chinese-Indian border, there is an ashram that is very small, but just above a Chinese takeaways, and that's where this particular art form was made, and well, I mean, what's better than that? You know, what's better than first thing in the morning, really stretching, really sweating, and really choking down some greasy Chinese omelette.
And you're incredibly calm, of course, during that period, Ben, but the radio show, it fails. And you move straight on, and this again caused a lot of controversy at the time. You moved straight on to open the Ben Hurley Ballet School. You had no dance experience at all, Ben. What made you think that would work?
Well, how hard can it be? I mean, have you've been to the ballet? You've been to the ballet?
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's what is it? If you can walk on your toes and you can throw a bloke in the air, you can ballet. And that was our slogan.
And to be fair, a lot of people signed up, didn't they?
Well, they did. They did because we paid them. It was an awful business model.
But at the same time, a lot of talented dancers somehow came out at the end. But is it still open, the Ben Hurley Ballet School?
Yes, yeah. It's in a few locations across the United States now. Actually, we have more locations across the United States than Wendy's.
And success is often has a strange effect on you, Ben. That sense of inner calm that comes with failure isn't quite the same. You get a little bit too rich too fast on the ballet schools, and you become consumed with what seems to be some sort of doomsday panic and retreat to a vast bomb-proof bunker in South Dakota. What were the signs that drove you underground?
Well, the Bible talks about the four horsemen of the apocalypse and plague of locusts and other sort of apocalyptic signs. But see, I think those are false flags, Stephen. I don't think those are the signs of the apocalypse at all. And what I saw then in the mid-90s were some other signs of the apocalypse. And one was flannel shirts being worn as sort of smart casual wear. And particularly in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, this seemed to be a popular trend. And it just seemed to me that grown men walking around wearing sort of pajamas during the day was the beginning of the end of civilization as we know it. So I headed for this bunker, and as you know, there's many bunkers across the United States. There's many doomsday loonies, as we call them. That's not a derogatory term. That's what people with bunkers prefer to be called is a loony. And so I hunkered down there until I knew it was safe to come out.
And that time in isolation, obviously bringing us closer to the present day, but your time in isolation with your 3 wives proves very fruitful as you put on a show each night for the ladies before going to bed. Given that you were in a bunker with nothing going on, what were your gags about in those early days? Where did you come up with your material with nothing going on?
Well, I mean, you have skipped a part there. Of course, the 3 wives, I had converted to Mormonism, so all my act was 100% sort of a light ribbing, a satire of my newfound religion of Mormonism. Without being offensive. I mean, I guess it might be, considered a little edgy in some of the more conservative parts of Utah, but I tell you what, those ladies, they loved a gentle rib of the Mormon way, and I tell you, on some nights, the special underwear came off, Stephen. I won't lie to you.
And after 6 years below decks and a lot of nights when the special underwear came out, Wife 3 sets up why did you just call them 1, 2 and 3, Ben?
Well, that was actually their name. Yeah. Incredible coincidence. Because, I mean, I could have met someone called 1, 2 and 4. But no, 1, 2 and 3 was their genuine names.
It is Wife 3 who sets up a live feed to one of your gigs, and your talent spotted by Jimmy Kimmel. Of course, the rest is history. You now earn 4 million krona a year doing shows in Sweden and New Zealand, as well as America. Which takes us to the present day, Ben, and finally, the stand by or catch a ship section. So this section involves me saying things that, it's quotations from your past, Ben. These are things that you've said in the past. You may not even remember them. They're from a different time in your life. Uh-huh. You either have to stand by them, that's you still believe these things, or you have to catch a ship. You distance yourself from what you said in the past. So these are direct Ben Hurley quotes. Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And you can just do the catchphrase, or you can expand. It's entirely up to you. Number 1, penguins are exactly the same as pangolins.
Well, I stand by that, and I think a penguin, as we all know what a penguin is, but no one knows what a pangolin is, and that's why I can stand by that phrase, because of the ignorance of the entire world's population about what a pangolin is.
Number 2, people see me as the Auckland Al Capone.
Well, pending the current tax investigation, I might have to catch a ship on that one.
Number 3, I froze one of my hands for a year, and on taking it out of the freezer, it worked straight away.
Medical science is a wonderful thing. I 100% stand by that. Although you can't really put the hand in the freezer without having the door open. So it actually, the freezer has to run in all the time, and so it's incredibly wasteful on electricity. So when I got the power bill, I actually cut my hand off anyway.
Number 4, the United Kingdom doesn't even float.
The United Kingdom doesn't float. I mean, everyone knows that, right? It's bolted to France. Under the English Channel are 2 giant chains that keep it to France, and without it wouldn't float. It wouldn't float on water. It would float in the air. It's very, very full of helium.
How did you find that out, Ben?
Again, medical science is a wonderful thing, and I've actually had my brain added to by experimental means that I really can't get into.
Number 5, and you're obviously feeling this is maybe in your egg fried yoga period. You could pour my life into a cafetiere.
I'm going to catch a ship on that because I don't understand some of the words.
Number 6, bats are constantly using fake tan.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Well, I stand by that. I mean, I think you'll agree with me there that a bat has to use fake tan because it's nocturnal and gets absolutely no exposure to the sun. So how else will it tan?
Which brings us to the end of the show, Ben. I must thank you so much for joining us today on Looking Back. Last couple of questions. We always discuss, you've told us in advance how you'd like to be buried. You'd like your ashes blasted towards the sun in a plastic bag. Why do you want to go that way, Ben?
We live in an era, Stephen, where plastic bags are a commodity that are very rare and very, very precious. I don't know. I believe in Britain they're banned as they are here in New Zealand. So there's very few left. And for my remains to be in one of these glorious testaments to man's achievements of the past would give me an enormous satisfaction through eternity.
And you've chosen the song The Road I Forgot by The Years to be playing as you're blasted into the sky. Why have you gone for that tune?
Well, everybody loves to sing along, and the 3 or 4 people that still, like me, really love that song and will really belt it out as I float into the ether.
Thank you very much again, Ben. And we play ourselves out. We play Ben Into the Sky with The Road I Forgot by The Years.
How can I wipe a smile on your face? Now you've gone and there is no trace. And I know I'm the fortunate one, but it's not all fun in the sun. And the road you live on is a road I forgot. How can I go back? In this life, wonder what I'll be. You were here, then you would tell me. In a memory of summer days, I see you come out of the haze, and the road you live on is a road I forgot. How can I go back? How can I go back? And the road you live on is the road I forgot. How can I go back? Yeah, how can I go back?